Chapter 3. The monster attacked from the darkness, from an ambush, silently and horrendously. It suddenly materialized in the darkness like an exploding flame flaring up, like a tongue of flame. Geralt, though taken by surprise, reacted instinctively. He dodged, brushing the dungeon wall. The beast flew past, rebounded off the dirt floor like a ball, flailed its wings, and leapt again, hissing and opening its awful beak. But this time the Witcher was ready. He jabbed from the elbow, aiming at the crop beneath the crimson dewlap, which was large, twice as big as a turkey's. He found the target and felt his blade slice the body open. The blow's force knocked the beast to the ground against the wall. The Scoffin screamed, and it was almost a human scream. It thrashed around among broken bricks, writhed and fluttered its wings, splashing blood and lashing its whip-like tail around. The Witcher was certain the battle was over, but the monster surprised him unpleasantly. It unexpectedly lunged for his throat, croaking horribly, talons outstretched and beak snapping. Geralt dodged, pushed off from the wall with his shoulder, and smote with great force from below, taking advantage of the momentum he'd generated. The wounded Scoffin tumbled among the bricks again, and stinking gore splashed on the dungeon wall, describing fanciful patterns. Wounded, the monster stopped thrashing around, and was only trembling, croaking, extending its long neck, swelling its crop, and shaking its dewlap. Blood flowed swiftly between the bricks it lay on. Geralt could easily have finished it off, but didn't want to damage its hide too much. He waited calmly for the Scoffin to bleed to death. He moved a few steps away, turned around to the wall, undid his trousers and pissed, whistling a sad song. The Scoffin stopped croaking, lay still, and went quiet. The Witcher moved closer and poked it gently with the point of his sword. Seeing it was done, he seized the monster by the tail and picked it up. He held it by the base of its tail at hip height. The Scoffin's vulture-like beak reached the floor, and its wingspan measured more than 4 feet. "You're light, Karolishek." Geralt shook the beast, which indeed didn't weigh much more than a well-fattened turkey. "You're light. Luckily they're paying me by the piece, not the pound." "It's the first time," Reynard de Boisfren whistled softly through his teeth, which, as Geralt knew, he did to express the highest admiration. "It's the first time I've ever seen anything like it. An absolute oddity, by my troth. An oddity to end all oddities. Does that mean it's the infamous basilisk?" "No." Geralt raised the monster higher so the knight could examine it better. "It isn't a basilisk. It's a Karolishek." "Is there a difference?" "A crucial one. A basilisk, also known as a regulus, is a reptile, but a Karolishek, also known as a Scoffin or cockatrice, is neither a reptile nor a bird. It's the only member of an order that scholars called ornithoreptiles, for after lengthy debate they found— "And which one," interrupted Reynard de Boisfren, clearly uninterested in the scholar's motives, "can kill or petrify with a look?" "Neither of them. That's fiction." "Why do people fear them both so much, then? This one here isn't all that big. Can it really be dangerous?" "This one here," the Witcher shook his quarry, "usually attacks from the rear and aims unerringly between the vertebrae or below the left kidney at the aorta. One blow of its beak usually suffices. And as regards the basilisk, it doesn't matter where it strikes. Its venom is the most powerful known neurotoxin. It kills in a few seconds." "Ugh. And which one, do tell, can be dispatched with the help of a looking-glass?" "Either of them, if you whack it over the head." Reynard de Boisfren chortled. Geralt didn't laugh. The joke about the basilisk and the looking-glass had stopped amusing him in Kaer Morhen, for the teachers had flogged it to death. The jokes about virgins and unicorns were just as unamusing. The record for idiocy and primitivism was achieved in Kaer Morhen by the numerous versions of the joke about the she-dragon the young Witcher shook hands with for a bet. He smiled at the memories. "I prefer you when you smile," said Reynard, scrutinizing him very closely. "I prefer you much more, 100-fold more like you are now, compared to how you were back in October, after that scrap in the Druid's forest when we were riding to Beauclair. Back then, let me tell you, you were sullen, embittered, and as sour as a usurer who's been swindled, and as irritable as a man who hasn't had any luck the whole night, or even in the morning." "Was I really like that?" "Really? Don't be surprised that I prefer you the way you are now. Changed." "Occupational therapy." Geralt shook the Kurolashek he was holding by the tail. The salutary influence of professional activity on the psyche. "And so, to continue my cure, let's get down to business. There's a chance of making a little more money on the scoffin than the fee agreed for its killing. It's almost undamaged. If you have a customer for a whole one, to be stuffed or prepared, don't take less than 200. If you have to flog it in portions, remember that the most valuable feathers are from just above the rump, specifically those ones, the central tail feathers. You can sharpen them much thinner than goose feathers. They write more prettily and cleanly, and are harder wearing. A scribe who knows his stuff won't hesitate to give 5 apiece." "I have customers wanting to stuff a corpse," smiled the knight. "The Cooper's Guild. They saw that vile creature stuffed in Castel Ravello. You know, that dryad water flea, or whatever it's called. You know the one. The one they clubbed to death in the dungeons, under the ruins of the old castle the day after Samhain." "I remember." "Well, so the Coopers saw the stuffed beast and asked me for something equally rarefied to decorate their guild chambers. The Kurolashek will be just right. The Coopers in Tucson, as you can guess, are a guild who can't complain of a shortage of orders, and thanks to that are wealthy. They're bound to give 220, perhaps even more. I'll try to haggle. And as far as the feathers are concerned, the barrel bodgers won't notice if we pull a few pieces from the Kurolashek's arse and sell them to the ducal chancery. The chancery doesn't pay out of its own pocket, but from the ducal coffers, so they'll pay not 5, but 10 for a feather without a quibble." "I take my hat off to your shrewdness." "Numen est umen." Reynard de Boisfren grinned more broadly. "Mamma must have sensed something, christening me with the name of the sly fox from the well-known cycle of fables." "You ought to have been a merchant, not a knight." "I ought," agreed the knight. "But, well, if you're born the son of a noble lord, you'll live a noble lord and die a noble lord, having first begat further noble lords. You won't change anything, no matter what. Anyway, you reckon up pretty decently, Geralt, but you don't make a living from merchandising." "I don't, for similar reasons to you, but with a single difference that I won't begat anything. Let's get out of these dungeons." Outside, at the foot of the castle walls, they were enfolded by the cold and wind from the hills. The night was bright, the sky cloudless and starry. The moonlight sparkled on the swathes of fresh white snow lying on the vineyards. Their tethered horses greeted them with snorts. "We ought to meet the customer at once and collect the money," said Reynard, looking meaningfully at the Witcher. "But you are surely hurrying back to Beauclair, what? To a certain bedchamber?" Geralt did not reply, as he didn't answer questions like that on principle. He hauled the Kurolashek's remains onto the pack-horse and then mounted Roach. "Let's meet the customer," he decided, turning back in the saddle. "The night is young and I'm hungry, and I fancy a drink. Let's ride to town, to the pheasantry." Reynard de Boisfren laughed, adjusted a shield with a red and gold checkerboard pattern hanging from the pommel, and climbed up into the high saddle. "As you wish, my good fellow. The pheasantry it is. Yah, Bucephalus." They went at a walk down the snow-covered hillside towards the highway, which was clearly marked by a sparse avenue of poplars. "You know what, Reynard?" Geralt suddenly said. "I also prefer you as you are now, talking normally. Back in October, you were using infuriating, moronic mannerisms." "'Pon my word, Witcher, I am a knight-errant," chortled Reynard de Boisfren. "Have you forgotten? Knights always talk like morons. It's a kind of sign, like this shield here. You can recognize the fraternity, like by the arms on the shield." "'Pon my word," said the checkered knight. "You needlessly bother yourself, Sir Geralt. Your beloved is surely hale, for she has doubtless utterly forgotten about her infirmity. The Duchess retains excellent court medics, fully capable of curing any malaise. 'Pon my word, there's no need to distress yourself." "I'm of the same opinion," said Regius. "Cheer up, Geralt. After all, the druidesses treated Milva too." "And druidesses are expert healers," interjected Caer. "The best proof of which is my very own noggin, which was cut open by a miner's axe, and which is now, take a look, almost good as new. Milva is sure to be well too. There's no need to worry." "Let's hope." "She's hale, your Milva, and hearty," repeated the knight. "I'll wager she's already cavorting at wedding balls, cutting a caper, feasting. In Beauclair, at the court of Duchess Anarietta, balls alternate with banquets. Ha! 'Pon my word, now that I've fulfilled my vows, I also—" "You've fulfilled your vows?" "Fortune shone on me, for you ought to know that I made my vows, and not just any vows, but on a flying crane, in the spring. I vowed to fell 15 marauders before Yule. I was lucky. I'm now free of my vows. Now I can drink and eat beef. Aha! I don't have to conceal my name. I am, if you will, Renard de Boisfren." "It's our pleasure." "Regarding those balls," said Angoulême, urging her horse on to catch up with them, "I hope Platter and Goblet won't pass us by either, and I'd also love to shake a leg." "'Pon my word, there'll be everything at Beauclair," Renard de Boisfren assured them. "Balls, feasts, banquets, revels, and poetry evenings. Your friends of Dandelions, for heaven's sake. Of Viscount Julian's, I meant to say. And the Lady Duchess is most fond of the latter." "I'll see. He was bragging about it," said Angoulême. "What was the truth about that love? Do you know the story, Sir Knight? Do tell." "Angoulême," said the Witcher, "do you have to know?" "I don't, but I want to. Don't whinge, Geralt, and stop being sullen, for at the sight of your mush, roadside mushroomed pickle. And you, Sir Knight, say on." Other knights errant, riding at the head of the procession, were singing a knightly refrain from a repeating chorus. The words of the song were unbelievably foolish. "It occurred these 6 summers past," began the knight. "The poet tarried with us all winter and spring. He played his lute, sang romances, and declaimed poetry. Duke Raymond was actually staying in Cintra at a council. He didn't hurry home. It was no secret he had a paramour in Cintra. And the Duchess and Lord Dandelion— Beauclair is strange indeed, and spellbinding, full of amatory enchantment. You shall see for yourselves. As the Duchess and Lord Dandelion learned then, they noticed not from verse to verse, from word to word, from compliment to compliment, poises, glances, sighs. To put it briefly, both came to an intimate understanding." "How intimate?" chortled Angoulême. "One was not an eyewitness," said the knight coolly, "and it is not seemly to repeat rumours. Besides, as my good lady undoubtedly knows, love has many faces, and it is a most relative thing how intimate was the understanding." Caer snorted softly. Angoulême had nothing to add. "The Duchess and Lord Dandelion," continued Renard de Boisfren, "trysted in secret some 2 months from Bellatane to the summer solstice, but they disregarded caution. The news got out. Evil rumours began to spread. Lord Dandelion, without hesitating, mounted his horse and rode away. He acted prudently, as it turned out, for as soon as Duke Raymond returned from Cintra, an accommodating serving lad informed him of everything. As soon as the Duke found out what an insult he had suffered and how he had been cuckolded, he was seized by yellow bile, as you may imagine. He overturned a tureen of broth on the table, cleft the informer lad with a hatchet, and uttered scabrous words. He then punched the marshal's face and smashed a great Coviran looking-glass before witnesses. Then he imprisoned the Duchess in her chambers, and having threatened her with torture, extracted everything from her. At which point he sent after Lord Dandelion, ordered him put to death without clemency, and his heart torn from his breast. For, having read something similar in an ancient ballad, he meant to fry his heart and force Duchess Henrietta to eat it in front of the entire court. Ugh, what an abomination! Luckily, Lord Dandelion managed to flee. Indeed, and the Duke died. He did. The incident, as I said, caused him great ill humour. His blood became so heated from it that apoplexy and palsy seized him. He lay like a plank for nigh on a year, but recovered, even began to walk. Only he winked one eye, ceaselessly, like this. The knight turned around in the saddle, squinted his eye, and screwed up his face like a monkey. Although the Duke had always been an incurable fornicator and stallion, he continued a moment later, that winking made him even more pericolossus in love-making, for every dame thought he was winking at her out of fondness and giving her amorous signs, and dames are most covetous of such homage. I in no way impute that they are all wanton and dissolute, by no means, but the Duke, as I said, winked much, almost endlessly. So, on the whole, he got what was coming to him. His cup ran over in his frolics, and one night he was struck again by the apoplexy. He gave up the ghost in his bedchamber. "Atop a dame?" guffawed Angoulême. "In truth." The knight, until then deadly serious, smiled under his whiskers. "In truth, beneath one. The details are unimportant." "Verily," nodded Cailla seriously. "Duke Raymond wasn't greatly mourned, was he? During the tale I had the impression that you were fonder of the inconstant wife than the betrayed husband," the vampire interrupted in mid-sentence. "Perhaps for the reason that she now reigns?" "That is one reason," replied Reynard de Boisfren disarmingly frankly, "but not the only one. For Duke Raymond, may the earth lie lightly on him, was such a good-for-nothing rogue and, excuse my language, whoreson, that he would have given the very devil stomach ulcers in half a year, and he reigned for 7 years in Toussaint, while everyone adored and adores Duchess Henrietta." "May I then venture," said the Witcher tartly, "that Duke Raymond didn't leave many inconsolable friends who were ready to waylay Dandelion with daggers?" "You may." The knight glanced at him, and his eyes were quick and intelligent. "And, 'pon my word, you won't be wide of the mark. I said, did I not? Lady Henrietta dotes on the poet, and everyone here would walk through fire for Lady Henrietta." "The good knight returned to find he'd been spurned. His love had not tarried, but swiftly been married. A chevalier's woe with a hey nonny no." Crows, disturbed by the knight's singing, took flight, cawing from the roadside thicket. They soon rode out of the trees, straight into a valley among hills, on which the white towers of small castles were framed strikingly against the sky, which was coloured with dark blue streaks. Wherever they looked, the gentle hillsides were covered with neat avenues of evenly trimmed bushes like columns of soldiers. The ground was carpeted with red and gold leaves. "What is it?" asked Angoulême. "Vines." "Grapevines, yes," said Reynard de Boisfren. "They're the famed valleys of Sans Retour. The finest wines of the world are pressed from the grapes that mellow here." "It is true," agreed Regis, who as usual was an expert on everything. "The crux is the volcanic earth and the microclimate here, which ensures every year a simply ideal combination of sunny and rainy days. If we add traditions, expertise, and the utmost care of the vine dressers, it yields a result in the form of a product of the highest class and distinction." "Well said." The knight smiled. "Distinction, indeed. Look over there, say, at the hillside below that castle. Here, the castle gives the distinction to the vineyard and the cellars deep beneath it. That one is called Castel Revello, and from its vineyards come such wines as Evolus, Fiorano, Pomino, and the celebrated Est Est. You must have heard of it. One pays the same for a keg of Est Est as for 10 kegs of wine from Sidaris or the Nilfgaardian vineyards by the Alba. And there, look, as far as the eyes can see are the castles and other vineyards, and the names are surely no strangers to you either. Vermentino, Torricella, Casteldaccia, Tufo, Sancerre, Nuragus, Coronata, and finally Corvo Bianco, Gwyn Cherbin in the elven tongue. I trust the names are familiar to you. They are. Ugh. Angoulême contorted her face, particularly by learning the hard way to check if some rascal of an innkeeper hadn't poured us one of those famous wines by chance instead of the usual cider, because then you might have to leave your horse with him. So costly, Castel or Est. Yuck! I don't understand. It might be quality gear to those great lords, but we, ordinary folk, can get plastered just as well on the cheap stuff. And I'll tell you this, because I've experienced it. You puke after Est just the same as you do after Scrumpy. Caring not for Angoulême's vulgar October jests, Reynard leaned back from the table, his belt loosened. Today we drink a fine label and a fine vintage, Witcher. We can afford it. We've made some money. We can revel. That's right. Geralt beckoned to the innkeeper. After all, as Dandelion says, perhaps there are other motivations for earning money, but I just don't know any. So, let's eat whatever's behind those appetizing smells wafting from the kitchen. Incidentally, it's extremely crowded in the pheasantry today, though the hour's quite late. Why, it's Yuletide Eve, explained the innkeeper, overhearing him. Folk are wassailing, making merry, telling fortunes, as tradition demands, and tradition here, I know, interrupted the Witcher. And what did tradition demand from the kitchen today? Cold tongue with horseradish, capon broth with brain meatballs, beef roulade served with dumplings and cabbage. Keep it coming, good fellow. And to accompany it, what shall we drink with it, Reynard? If it's beef, said the knight after a moment's thought, then red Cote de Blessure. And the vintage? It was the year old Duchess Caraberta turned up her toes. That's the year, the innkeeper nodded. At your service, sire. A mistletoe wreath, clumsily thrown behind her by a wench from the next table, almost fell into Geralt's lap. The wench's companions whooped with laughter, and she blushed prettily. You're out of luck. The knight picked up the wreath and threw it back. He won't be your future husband. He's spoken for, noble maiden. He's already been ensnared by a pair of green orbs. Be quiet, Reynard. The innkeeper brought the order. They ate and drank in silence, listening to the revellers' merriment. Yule, said Geralt, putting down his cup. Mid-Inviern, the winter solstice. I've been hanging around here for 2 months. 2 wasted months. 1 month, Reynard corrected him coolly and soberly. If you've lost anything, it's but a month. Then the snows covered up the mountain passes, and you couldn't have left Toussaint, no matter what. You've waited until Yule, so you'll surely wait till spring, too. It's force majeure, thus your grief and sorrow are in vain. While as far as your sorrow goes, don't overdo the pretence, for I don't believe you regretted that much. Oh, what do you know, Reynard? What do you know? Not much, agreed the knight, pouring the wine. Not much more than what I see. And I saw your first encounter, yours and hers, in Beauclair. Do you remember the Feast of the Vat? The white knickers? Geralt did not reply. He remembered. A charming place, Beauclair Palace, full of amatory enchantment, muttered Reynard, savouring the wine's bouquet. The very sight is bewitching. I recall how you were all dumbstruck when you saw it in October. What was the expression Kaya used then? Let me think. An elegant little castle, Kaya said in admiration. Well, I'll be. An elegant and pleasing little castle indeed. The Duchess lives well, said the vampire. You have to admit it. Fucking nice gaff, added Angoulême. Beauclair Palace, repeated Renard de Boisfren proudly. An elven edifice, only slightly modified, allegedly by Pharamond himself. Not allegedly, objected Regis. Beyond any doubt. Pharamond's style is apparent at first glance. It suffices to look at those small towers. The slender white obelisks of the red-roofed towers referred to by the vampire soared into the sky, rising up from the castle's delicate construction, which grew wider towards the ground. The sight evoked the image of candles with festoons of wax flowing over the intricately carved base of a candlestick. "The town spreads out at the foot of Beauclair," explained Sir Reynard. "The walls, naturally, were added later. After all, as you know, elves don't wall their towns. Spur on your horses, noble comrades. We have a long road ahead of us. Beauclair only seems close, but the mountains distort perspective. Let us ride on." They rode swiftly, overtaking wanderers and goliards, wagons and carts loaded with dark, seemingly mouldy grapes. Then there were the town's busy, narrow streets, smelling of fermenting grape juice. Then a gloomy park full of poplars, yews, barberries, and boxwood. Then there were rose beds, mainly containing multiflora and centifolia. And further still, there were the carved columns, portals, and archivolts of the palace, liveried servants and flunkies. The man who greeted them was Dandelion, coiffured and arrayed like a prince. "Where's Milva?" "She's well, don't worry. You'll find her in the chambers that have been prepared for you. She doesn't want to leave them." "Why not?" "You'll find out later. And now follow me. The Duchess awaits." "In our travelling things?" "Such were her wishes." The hall they entered was full of people dressed as colourfully as birds of paradise. Geralt did not have time to look around. Dandelion shoved him towards a marble staircase, beside which were two women who stood out from the crowd, being assisted by pages and courtiers. It was quiet, but it became even quieter. The first woman had a pointed, turned-up nose, and her blue eyes were piercing and seemed a little feverish. Her chestnut hair was pinned up into an elaborately, truly artistic coiffure, supported by velvet ribbons, complete down to the tiniest nuances, including an unerringly geometric, sickle-shaped curl on her forehead. The upper part of her dress had a plunging neckline shimmering with 1,000 blue and lilac stripes on a black background. The skirt was black, densely strewn with tiny gold chrysanthemums in a regular pattern. The neckline and décolletage, something like a complicated scaffolding or cage, held captive in its intricate coils a necklace of lacquer, obsidian, emeralds, and lapis lazuli, ending in a jade cross which almost plunged between her small breasts, which were supported by a close-fitting bodice. The diamond-shaped neckline was large and plunging, bearing the woman's delicate shoulders, and seemed not to offer adequate support. Geralt was expecting the dress to slide from her bust at any moment. But it didn't, and was held in its proper place by the mysterious arcana of dressmaking and the buffers of puffed sleeves. The second woman equaled the first in height. She was wearing the same lipstick, and there the similarities ended. This woman wore a net cap on her short black hair, which metamorphosed at the front into a veil extending to the tip of her petite nose. The veil's floral motif didn't mask her beautiful, sparkling eyes set off by green eyeshadow. An identical floral veil covered the modest décolletage of her long-sleeved black dress, which in several places was scattered with an apparently random pattern of sapphires, aquamarines, rock crystals, and gold open-work stars. "Her enlightened ladyship, Duchess Anna Henrietta," someone whispered behind Geralt's back. "Kneel, sire." "I wonder which of the two," thought Geralt, bending his painful knee clumsily into a ceremonial bow. "Both look just as bloody high-born, not to say regal." "Arise, Sir Geralt," said the one with the intricate chestnut coiffure and pointed nose, dispelling his doubts. "We welcome you and your friends to Beauclair Palace in the Duchy of Toussaint. We are delighted to be able to offer lodging to people on such a noble mission. People, furthermore, being bonded in friendship with Viscount Julian, who is so dear to our heart." Dandelion bowed deeply and vigorously. "The Viscount," continued the Duchess, "has disclosed your names to us, revealed the nature of your expedition, and said what brings you to Toussaint. The tale touched our heart. We shall be glad to converse with you at a private audience, Sir Geralt. That matter must, however, be somewhat postponed, since state duties make their demands upon us. The grape harvest is over, and tradition demands our participation in the Festival of the Vat." The other woman, the one in the veil, leaned over towards the Duchess and quickly whispered something. Anna Henrietta looked at the Witcher, smiled, and licked her lips. "It is our will," she raised her voice, "that Geralt of Rivia shall serve us in the vat alongside Viscount Julian." A murmur ran through the group of courtiers and knights like the whisper of pines struck by the wind. Duchess Anarietta shot the Witcher another smouldering glance and left the hall with her companion and a retinue of pages. "By thunder," whispered the checkered knight, "I'll be damned. Quite some honour has befallen you, Witcher, sir." "I don't quite understand what this is about," Geralt admitted. "In what way am I to serve Her Highness?"
"Her Grace,"
broke in a portly gentleman with the appearance of a confectioner approaching.
"Forgive me, sire, for correcting you, but in the given circumstances I must do so. We greatly respect tradition and protocol here in Toussaint. I am Sebastian Le Goff, Chamberlain and Marshal of the Court."
"My pleasure."
"Lady Anna Henrietta's official and protocolary title,"
the Chamberlain not only looked like a confectioner, but even smelt of icing,
"is Her Enlightened Ladyship. Her unofficial one is Her Grace. Her familiar one beyond the court is Lady Duchess, but one should always address her as Your Grace."
"Thank you. I shall remember. And the other woman? How should I entitle her?"
"Her official title is the Honourable,"
the Chamberlain informed him gravely.
"but addressing her as Ma'am is permissible. She is kin to the Duchess and is called Fringilla Vigo. In accordance with Her Grace's will, you are to serve her, Madam Fringilla, in the vat."
"And what does this service consist of?"
"Nothing difficult. I shall explain soon. As you'll see, we've used mechanical presses for years, but nonetheless tradition."
The courtyard resounded with a hubbub and frenetic squealing of pipes, the wild music of recorders and the demented jingling of tambourines. Tumblers and buffoons dressed in garlands cavorted and somersaulted around a vat placed on a platform. The courtyard and cloisters were full of people, knights, ladies, courtiers, and richly attired burghers. Chamberlain Sebastian Le Goff raised up a staff twisted around with green vines and struck it 3 times against the podium.
Hear ye, he cried, "noble ladies, lords, and knights."
"Yea, yea," replied the crowd.
"Yea, yea. Welcome to our ancient custom. May the grape prosper. Yea, yea. May it mellow in the sun."
"Yea, yea, may it mellow."
"Yea, yea. May the trod grape ferment. May it gather strength and taste in the barrel. May it flow tastily to goblets, and thence to heads, to the glory of majesty, comely ladies, noble knights, and vine-dressers."
"Yea, yea, may it ferment."
"Let the beauties step forward."
2 women, Duchess Anna Henrietta and her black-haired companion, emerged from damask tents on opposite sides of the courtyard. They were both wrapped tightly in scarlet capes.
"Yea, yea."
The Chamberlain struck his cane on the ground.
"Let the youths step forward."
The youths had been instructed and knew what to do. Dandelion approached the Duchess, and Geralt, the black-haired woman, who he now knew was called the Honourable Fringilla Vigo. The 2 women cast off their capes as one, and the crowd greeted them with thunderous applause. Geralt swallowed. The women were wearing tiny, white, gossamer-thin blouses with shoulder straps revealing their midriffs, and clinging frilly knickers, and nothing else, not even jewellery. They were also barefoot. Geralt picked Fringilla up, and she quite eagerly put an arm around his neck. She smelled faintly of ambergris and roses, and femininity. She was warm, and her warmth penetrated him like an arrowhead. She was soft, and her softness scalded and nettled his fingers. They carried them to the vat, Geralt, Fringilla, and Dandelion the Duchess, and helped them alight on the grapes, which burst and spurted forth juice. The crowd roared, "Yay! Yay!" The Duchess and Fringilla placed their hands on each other's shoulders, and, by supporting one another more easily, kept their balance on the grapes, into which they had sunk up to their knees. The must squirted and sprayed around. The women, turning, trod the grapes, giggling like schoolgirls. Fringilla winked at the Witcher, quite against protocol. "Yay! Yay!" shouted the crowd. "Yay! Yay! May it ferment!" The crushed grapes splashed juice. The cloudy must bubbled and foamed copiously around the treader's knees. The Chamberlain struck his cane against the planks of the platform. Geralt and Dandelion moved closer, helping the women out of the vat. Geralt saw Anarietta pinch Dandelion's ear as he carried her, and her eyes shone dangerously. It seemed to him that Fringilla's lips brushed his cheek, but he couldn't be certain whether intentionally or not. The smell of the must was heady and intoxicating. He stood Fringilla on the podium and wrapped her in the scarlet cape. Fringilla squeezed his hand quickly and powerfully. "These ancient traditions," she whispered, "can be arousing, can't they?" "They can." "Thank you, Witcher. The pleasure's all mine." "Not all yours. I assure you, not all yours."
Pour the wine, Reynard.
More Yuletide prophecies were being carried out at the next table. A strip of apple peel cut into a long spiral was thrown down, and the initial letter of one's future partner's name was divined from the shape it arranged itself into. Each time, the peel formed itself into a letter S. In spite of that, there was no end to the mirth. The night poured. "It turned out that Milva was well," said the Witcher pensively, although she still had a bandage around her ribs. "She remained in her chamber, though, and refused to leave, not wanting at any cost to put on the dress she'd been presented with. It looked as though there could be a protocolary scandal, but the omniscient Regis pacified the situation. After quoting a good dozen precedents, he made the Chamberlain bring a male outfit to the archer. Angoulême, for a change, joyfully discarded her trousers, riding boots and foot wraps, and Soap, a dress and a comb, turned her into quite a pretty lass. All of us, let's face it, were cheered up by the bathhouse and the clean clothes. Even me. We set off for the audience in a very decent mood. Stop for a moment. Reynard gestured with his head. The business is heading towards us. Oh, and not one, but two vineyards. Malatesta, our customer, is bringing a comrade, and a rival. Wonders will never cease. Who's the other one? Pomerol vineyard. We're drinking their wine, Cote de Blessure, right now. Malatesta, the steward of the Vermentino vineyard, had noticed them, waved and approached, leading his companion, an individual with a black moustache and a bushy black beard, who resembled a brigand more than an official. Gentlemen, Malatesta introduced the bearded man. Mr. Alcides Firebrass, steward of Pomerol vineyard. Sit you down. We're here for but a moment to talk to Master Witcher regarding a beast in our cellars. I conclude from seeing your good selves here that the monster is killed. Dead. The agreed sum, Malatesta assured him, will be transferred to your account at the Cianfanelli's bank tomorrow at the latest. Oh, thanking you, Master Witcher. Thanks 100-fold. Such a gorgeous cellar. Vaulted, north-pointing, not too dry, not too damp. Just what's needed for wine, and owing to that vile brute, it couldn't be used.
You saw yourselves we needs must brick up all that part of the cellar, but the beast managed to find a way through. Where it came from is anyone's guess, probably from hell itself."
He spat on the floor.
"Caves hollowed out in volcanic tuff always abound in monsters," instructed Reynard de Boisfrain wisely.
He had been accompanying the Witcher for over a month, and being a good listener, had managed to learn a great deal.
"It goes without saying, where there's tough, there's sure to be a monster." "Very well, perhaps it was tough."
Malatesta glared at him.
"Whoever that tough happens to be, but folk are saying it's because our cellars are connected to deep caverns that are said to lead to the very centre of the earth. There are many similar dungeons and caves like that around here."
"Like under our cellars, to give the first example that springs to mind," said the black-bearded Pomerol vineyard. "Those dungeons go on for miles, but no one knows to where. The men who wanted to unravel the matter didn't return, and a dreadful monster was also seen there, they say. I therefore like to suggest—" "I can guess what you want to propose," said the Witcher dryly, "and I consent to the proposition. I will explore your cellars. We shall set the fee, depending on what I find there."
"You won't do badly," the bearded man assured him. "One more thing."
"Pray speak."
"That succubus that haunts men at night and torments them, which her enlightened ladyship the Duchess has ordered killed. I believe there's no need, for the ghoul doesn't bother anyone in truth. Yes, it occasionally haunts, bedevils a little."
"But not but adults," Malatesta quickly interrupted.
"You took the words out of my mouth, friend. All in all, the succubus doesn't harm anyone, and recently there's been no word about it at all. Doubtless it would be scared of you, Master Witcher. What then is the point of tormenting it? Why, you aren't lacking ready cash, sire, and were you to be short—"
"Something could be transferred to my account at Cianfanelli's bank," Geralt said with stony countenance. "To the Witcher's pension fund."
"So be it."
"Then not a single blonde hair on the succubus's head will be harmed."
"Farewell, then."
The two vineyards stood up.
"Feast in peace, we shan't disturb. It's a holiday today, a tradition here in Toussaint. Tradition is sacred," said Geralt.
"I know." The party at the next table were making another noisy Yuletide prophecy, carried out with the help of balls fashioned from the soft inside of cakes and bones left over from a carp. The wine was flowing as they did so. The innkeeper and the serving girls were rushed off their feet, hurrying to and fro with jugs.
"The famous succubus," remarked Reynard, serving himself more cabbage, "began the memorable series of Witcher contracts that you took on in Toussaint. Then things speeded up, and you couldn't keep the customers away. Funny, I don't remember which vineyard gave you the first contract."
"You weren't present. It happened the day after the audience with the Duchess, which you didn't attend either, as a matter of fact."
"No wonder. It was a private audience."
"Private, huh?" snorted Geralt. "It was attended by some 20 people, not counting the motionless lackeys, youthful pages, and a bored jester. Among that number was Legoff, the chamberlain, with the appearance and smell of a confectioner, and several magnates bowing under the weight of their golden chains. There were several coves in black, councillors, or perhaps judges. There was the Baron with the bull's head coat of arms I met in Caed Mirkvid. There was, naturally, Fringilla Vigo, a person evidently close to the Duchess. And there we were, our entire gang, including Milver in male costume. I was wrong to speak of the entire company. Dandelion was not with us. Dandelion, or rather Viscount What's-His-Name, sat sprawled in a curule seat on her pointy-nosed highness Anrietta's right hand and postured like a peacock, like a real pet. Anrietta, Fringilla and Dandelion were the only people seated. No one else was permitted to sit down. And anyway, I was glad they didn't make me kneel. The Duchess listened to my tale, seldom interrupting, fortunately. When, however, I briefly related the results of the conversations with the Druidesses, She wrung her hands, in a gesture suggesting worry as sincere as it was exaggerated. I know that sounds like some sort of bloody oxymoron, but believe me, Reinhardt, in her case, that's how it was.
Oh, oh,
said Duchess Anna Henrietta, wringing her hands.
You have sorely worried us, Master Geralt. Truly, do we tell you that sorrow fills our heart?
She sniffed through her pointed nose, held out her hand, and Dandelion at once pressed a monogrammed cambric handkerchief into it. The Duchess brushed both her cheeks with the handkerchief so as not to wipe the powder off.
Oh, oh, she repeated. So the Druidesses knew nothing about Ciri? They were unable to help you? Was all your effort then wasted, and your journey in vain?
Certainly not in vain, Geralt answered with conviction. I confess I'd counted on obtaining some concrete information or hints from the Druids that would at least explain in the most general way why Ciri is the object of such a relentless pursuit. The Druids, though, couldn't or didn't want to help me, and in this respect I indeed gained nothing, but— He paused for a moment, not for dramatic effect. He was wondering how frank he could be in front of the entire auditorium. I know that Ciri's alive, he finally said dryly. She was probably wounded. She's still in danger, but she's alive. Anna Henrietta gasped, applied the handkerchief again, and squeezed Dandelion's arm.
We pledge you our help and support, she said. Stay in Toussaint as long as you wish. You ought to know that we have resided in Sintra, and we knew and were fond of Pavetta. We knew and liked little Ciri. We are with you with all our heart, Master Geralt. If needs be, you shall have the assistance of our scholars and astrologers. Our libraries and book collections stand open before you. You are certain, we deeply trust, to find some track, sign or spoor that will indicate the right way. Do not act hastily. You need not hurry. You may stay here as you like. You are a most welcome guest.
Thank you, Your Grace. Geralt bowed. Thank you for your kindness and favour. We must, nonetheless, set off as soon as we've rested a little. Ciri is still in danger. When we stay in one place too long, the threat not only grows, but begins to endanger the people who show us kindness, and unrelated strangers. I wouldn't want to allow that to happen for anything. The Duchess was silent for some time, stroking Dandelion's forearm with measured movements, as you would a cat.
Your words are noble and virtuous, she said at last, but you have nothing to fear. Our knights routed the ne'er-do-wells pursuing you, so that none escaped with his life. Viscount Julian told us about it. Anyone who dares to trouble you will meet the same fate. You are under our care and protection.
I value that. Geralt bowed again, under his breath, cursing his knee, but not only his knee. Nonetheless, I cannot omit to mention something Viscount Dandelion forgot to tell your enlightened ladyship. The ne'er-do-wells from the mine who pursued me to Belhaven, and whom your valiant knighthood vanquished in Caed Mirkvid, were indeed ne'er-do-wells of the first water, but they bore Nilfgaardian livery.
And what of it?
It was on the tip of his tongue to say that if the Nilfgaardians had captured Aedion in 20 days, they would need just 20 minutes to capture her little duchy. There is a war on, he said instead. What happened in Belhaven and Caed Mirkvid may be regarded as a diversion at the rear that usually results in repression. In wartime—
The war,
the Duchess interrupted him, raising her pointy nose,
is definitely over. We wrote to our cousin, Emir var Emrys, regarding this matter. We sent a memorandum to him, in which we demanded that he put an end forthwith to the senseless bloodletting. The war is sure to be over. Peace is sure to have been concluded.
Not exactly, replied Geralt coldly. Fire and sword are wreaking havoc on the far side of the Yaruga. Blood is flowing. There's nothing to indicate that it's about to end. Quite the contrary, I'd say. He immediately regretted what he'd said.
What?
The Duchess's nose, it appeared, became even pointier, and a nasty, grindingly snarling note sounded in her voice.
Did I hear right? The war is still raging. Why wasn't I informed of this, Minister Tremblay? Your Grace,
mumbled one of the golden chains, genuflecting.
I didn't want to concern you, worry, Your Grace. God,
Her Majesty howled.
To the Tower with him. You are in disfavour, Lord Tremblay. In disfavour. Lord Chamberlain, Mr. Secretary. At your service, your enlightened ladyship. Have the Chancellery immediately issue a severe note to our cousin, the Emperor of Nilfgaard. We demand that he immediately, and I mean immediately, stop swearing and makes peace. For war and discord are evil things. Discord ruins and accord builds.
Your Grace, mumbled the Chamberlain confectioner, as white as caster sugar, is absolutely right.
What are you still doing here, gentlemen? We have issued our orders. Be off with you this instant.
Geralt looked around discreetly. The courtiers had stony expressions, from which he concluded that similar incidents were nothing new at the court. He made a firm resolution only to say yes to the Lady Duchess in future. Henrietta brushed the tip of her nose with a handkerchief and then smiled at Geralt.
As you see, she said, your anxieties were unfounded. You have nothing to fear, and may rest here as long as you like.
Yes, Your Grace. In the silence, the tapping of a Death Watch beetle in one of the pieces of antique furniture could be heard distinctly, as could the curses being hurled by a groom in a distant courtyard.
We also have a request for you, Master Geralt.
Henrietta interrupted the silence.
In your capacity as a witcher.
Yes, Your Grace.
It is the request of many noble ladies of Toussaint, and ours at the same time. A nocturnal monster is plaguing local homesteads. This devil, this phantom, this succubus in female form, so lewd that we daren't describe it, torments our virtuous and faithful husbands. She haunts bedchambers at night, committing lewd acts and disgusting perversions, which modesty forbids us to speak of. You, as an expert, surely know what the matter is.
Yes, Your Grace.
The ladies of Toussaint ask you to put an end to this abomination, and we add our voice to this request, and assure you of our generosity.
Yes, Your Grace. Angoulême found the Witcher and the Vampire in the palace grounds, where they were enjoying a walk and a discreet conversation.
You won't believe me, she panted. You won't believe me when I tell you, but it's the honest truth.
Spit it out.
Reynard de Boisfrain, the checkered knight-errant, is standing in a queue before the ducal treasurer with the other knights-errant. And you know for what? For his monthly salary. The queue, I'm telling you, is half an arrow shot long, and it's sparkling with coats of arms. I asked Reynard what it's all about, and he said errant knights also get hungry.
So what's the problem?
You must be joking. It's a knight-errant's noble vocation to wander, not for a monthly salary. The one does not preclude the other, said the vampire Regius very gravely. Truly, believe me, Angoulême.
Believe him, Angoulême, said Geralt dryly. Stop running around the palace looking for scandal and go and keep Milva company. She's in a dreadful state. She oughtn't to be alone.
True. I think Auntie's got a period because she's as angry as a wasp. I think Angoulême. I'm going.
Geralt and Regius stopped beside a bed of slightly wilted centifolia roses, but they were unable to talk any longer. A very thin man in an elegant cloak, the colour of umber, emerged from behind the orangery.
Good day.
He bowed, brushing his knees with a marten calpac.
May I ask which of you gentlemen is the witcher known as Geralt, and renowned for his craft?
I am he.
I am Jean Catillon, steward of the Castel Torricella vineyards. The fact is that a witcher would serve us very well in the vineyard,
I wish to find out if you would not consider what is it about." "It is thus," began Steward Catillon. "Owing to this damned war, merchants visit more seldom. Our reserves are growing, and there is less and less space for the barrels. We thought it was a small problem, for beneath the castles the cellars go on for miles, ever deeper. I think the cellars extend to the centre of the earth. We also found a little cellar under Torricella, beautiful, if you please, vaulted, not too dry, not too damp, just right for the wine to mature."
"What of it?"
the Witcher interrupted. "It turned out that some kind of monster prowls in the cellar, if you please, which probably came from the depths of the earth. It burned 2 people, melted their flesh to the bone, and blinded another, because the monster, sire, spits and pukes some sort of caustic lye."
"A Solpooger," Geralt stated bluntly, "also called a venomer."
"Well, well," smiled Regis. "You can see for yourself, Lord Catillon, that you're dealing with an expert. This expert, one might say, is a godsend. And have you turned to the renowned local knights errant in this matter? The Duchess has an entire regiment of them, and missions like these are, let's face it, their speciality, their raison d'etre." "Not at all." Steward Catillon shook his head. "Their raison d'etre is to protect the roads and passes, for if the merchants couldn't get here, we'd all be reduced to beggary. What's more, the knights are bold and valiant, but only on horseback. None of them would venture onto the ground. What's more, they're He broke off and fell silent. He had the expression of a person who, if he could, would kick himself, and greatly regretted it.
"They're expensive."
Geralt finished off the sentence without excessive spitefulness.
"So you ought to know, good sir, that I'm more expensive. It's a free market, and there's free competition. If we sign a contract, I'll dismount and head underground. Think it through, but don't bother too long, for I'm not staying long in Tucson."
"You astonish me," said Regis, as soon as the steward had gone. "Has the Witcher in you suddenly revived? Are you accepting contracts? Going after monsters?"
"I'm astonished myself," replied Geralt frankly. "I reacted instinctively, prompted by an inexplicable impulse. I'll weasel out of it. I'll treat every quote they offer as too low. Always. Let's get back to our conversation."
"Hold on." The vampire gestured with his eyes. "Something tells me you have more clients." Geralt swore under his breath. 2 knights were walking towards him down the cypress-lined avenue. He recognized the first at once. The huge bull's head on a snow-white tabard couldn't have been confused with any other crest. The other knight, tall, grey-haired, with nobly angular physiognomy, as though carved from granite, had 5 gold demi-fleur-de-lis on his blue tunic. Having stopped at the regulation distance of 2 paces, the knights bowed. Geralt and Regis returned the bows, after which the 4 of them observed a silence of 10 heartbeats, as decreed by chivalric custom. "Gentlemen," said Bull's Head, "may I introduce Baron Parmarin de Lanfall? My name is, as you may recall,
Baron de Peran. How could we not?"
"We have an urgent matter for Master Witcher," Peyrac Peran got down to business, "regarding, so to speak, a professional undertaking."
"Yes?"
"In private."
"I have no secrets from Master Regis."
"But the noble gentleman undoubtedly do." The vampire smiled. "For which reason, with your permission, I shall go to look at that charming little pavilion, probably a temple of quiet and private contemplation. Lord de Peyrac Peran, Lord de Lanfall." They exchanged bows.
"I'm all ears."
Geralt interrupted the silence, having no intention of waiting for the 10th heartbeat to die away. "The matter," Peyrac Peran lowered his voice and looked round timidly, "concerns this succubus. Well, this nocturnal phantom, the one that haunts, which the Duchess and the ladies have commissioned you to destroy. Have they promised you much for the killing of the spectre?"
"I beg your pardon, but that's a trade secret."
"But of course," responded Palmerin de Lanfort, the knight with the fleur-de-lis cross.
Your conduct is commendable. Indeed, I greatly fear that I shall be insulting you with this proposal, but in spite of that I submit it. Relinquish the contract, Master Witcher. Don't go after the succubus, but leave it in peace, saying nothing to the ladies or the Duchess, and upon my word, we the gentlemen of Toussaint will outbid the lady's offer, bewildering you with our generosity.
A proposal, said the Witcher coldly. That is indeed not very far from an insult.
Sir Geralt,
Palmerin de Lanfort's face was hard and grave.
I shall tell you what emboldened us to make the offer. It was the rumour about you that said you only kill monsters that represent a danger. A real danger, not an imagined one, stemming from ignorance or prejudice. Permit me to say that the succubus doesn't threaten or harm anybody. It haunts people's dreams from time to time, and bedevils a little, but exclusively adults,
Perac Peran added quickly. The ladies of Toussaint, said Geralt, looking around, would not be happy to learn of this conversation. The Duchess likewise.
We agree absolutely with you, mumbled Palmerin de Lanfort. Discretion is recommended in every respect. One should let sleeping bigots lie.
Open me an account in one of the local dwarven banks, Geralt said slowly and softly, and astonish me with your generosity. I nonetheless warn you that I'm not easily astonished.
And we shall nonetheless do our best,
promised Perac Peran proudly. They exchanged farewell bows. Regis, who had naturally heard everything with his vampirish hearing, returned.
Now, he said without a smile, you may also naturally claim that that was an involuntary reaction with an inexplicable impulse, but you'll be hard-pressed to explain away the open bank account.
Geralt looked somewhere high up, far away above the tops of the cypresses. Who knows, he said. Perhaps we'll spend a few days here after all, bearing in mind Milva's ribs. Perhaps even more than a few days. Perhaps a few weeks. So, it won't hurt if we gain financial independence for that time.
Hence the account of the Cianfanellis,
nodded Reynard de Boisfren.
Well, if the Duchess learned about this, there would certainly be a reshuffle, a new distribution of patrons of nobility. Perhaps I would be promoted. I give my word, I truly regret not having the makings of an informer. Tell me about the famous feast I was so looking forward to. I so wished to be at that banquet, to eat and drink, but they sent me abroad to the watchtower in the cold, foul weather. What a blight, the doom of a night.
The great and grandiosely heralded feast, began Geralt, was preceded by serious preparations. We had to find Milva, who'd hidden in the stables, and convince her that the fate of Ciri and almost the entire world depended on her participation in the banquet. We almost had to force her into a dress. Then we had to make Angoulême promise she would avoid saying fuck and arse. Once we'd finally achieved everything and intended to relax with a glass of wine, Chamberlain Le Goff appeared, smelling of icing sugar and puffed up like a swine's bladder.
In the given circumstances, I must stress, began Chamberlain Le Goff nasally, that there are no inferior places at Her Grace's table. No one has the right to feel piqued by the place assigned to him or her. We, in Toussaint, nevertheless, avidly observe ancient traditions and customs, and according to those customs—
Get to the point, sir.
The feast is tomorrow. I must execute a seating plan according to honour and rank.
Naturally, said the Witcher gravely. I tell you what's what. The most noble of us, both in rank and honour, is Dandelion.
Viscount Julian, said the Chamberlain, putting on airs, is an extraordinarily honoured guest, and thus will sit at Her Grace's right hand.
Naturally, the Witcher repeated, as grave as death itself. And regarding us, he didn't reveal our ranks, titles, and honours, did he?
He only revealed," the Chamberlain cleared his throat, "that my lords and ladies are incognito on a nightly mission, and he was not able to betray its details or your true names, coats of arms, and titles, since they are protected by vows."
Precisely. So what's the problem?
"Why, I must seat you. You are guests, and moreover the Viscount's comrades. So, in any case, I will place you near the head of the table, among the barons. But, of course, it cannot be that you are all equal, lords and ladies, for it is never thus that everyone is equal. If by rank or birth one of you is more superior, he ought to sit at the top table near the Duchess."
He. The Witcher unhesitatingly pointed at the vampire, who was standing close by, raptly admiring a tapestry that took up almost the whole wall. "His account, but hush, it's a secret."
"Understood."
The Chamberlain almost choked in amazement.
"In the given circumstances, I shall put him on the right of Countess Nocturna, a nobly born aunt of the Lady Duchess."
"Neither you nor the aunt will regret it." Geralt was poker-faced. He has no equal, either in comportment or in the conversational arts.
"I'm glad to hear it. You, meanwhile, Lord of Rivia, will sit beside the esteemed Lady Fringilla, as tradition dictates. You bore her to the vat. You are her champion, as 'twere."
"Understood."
"Very well. Your Grace."
"Yes?" the vampire said in surprise. He had just moved away from the tapestry, which depicted a fight between giants and cyclops. Nothing, smiled Geralt. "We're just chatting."
"Ah."
Regis nodded.
"I don't know if you've noticed, gentlemen, but that cyclops in the tapestry, the one with the club, look at his toes. He, let's be frank, has 2 left feet." "Verily," Chamberlain Legoff confirmed without a trace of amazement. "There are plenty of tapestries like that in Beauclair. The master who wove them was a true master, but he drank an awful lot, as artists do."
"It's time we were going," said the Witcher, avoiding the eyes of the girls tipsy on wine, who were glancing at him from the table where they'd been amusing themselves with fortune-telling. "Let's be off, Reynard. Let's pay, mount up, and ride to Beauclair."
"I know why you're hurrying," the knight grinned. "Don't worry, your green-eyed lady is waiting. It's only just struck midnight. Tell me about the feast."
"I'll tell you and we'll ride."
"And we'll ride."
The sight of the table, arranged in a gigantic horseshoe, signalled emphatically that autumn was passing and winter was coming. Game, in all possible forms and varieties, dominated the delicacies heaped on great serving dishes and platters. There were huge quarters of boar, haunches and saddles of venison, various forcemeats, aspics, and pink slices of meat, autumnally garnished with mushrooms, cranberries, plum jam, and hawthorn berry sauce. There were autumn fowls, grouse, capercaillie, and pheasant, decoratively served with wings and tails. There was roast guinea fowl, quail, partridge, gargany, snipe, hazel grouse, and missel thrush. There were also genuine dainties such as fieldfare, roasted whole, without having been drawn, since the juniper berries with which the innards of these small birds are full form a natural stuffing. There was salmon trout from mountain lakes, there was zander, there was burbot and pike's liver. A green accent was given by réponse, late spring salad, which, if such a need arose, could even be dug up from under the snow. Mistletoe took the place of flowers. The evening's ornament was placed on a large silver tray in the middle, forming the centrepiece of the high table, at which Duchess Anarietta and the most distinguished guests were seated. Among truffles, flowers cut from carrots, quartered lemons, and artichoke hearts, lay a huge sturgeon, and on its back was a whole roast heron, standing on one leg, holding a gold ring in its upraised beak.
"I vow on the heron,"
cried Perec Peran, the baron with the bull's head in his arms, whom the Witcher knew well, standing and lifting up his goblet.
"I vow on the heron to defend knightly honour and the virtue of ladies, and I vow never, ever to yield the field to anyone."
The oath was rewarded with thunderous applause, and the eating began. "I vow on the heron," yelled another knight with bushy whiskers, pointing pugnaciously upwards. "I promise to defend the borders and her grace Anna Henrietta to the last drop of my blood. And in order to prove my loyalty, I vow to paint a heron on my shield and fight incognito for a year, concealing my name in arms, calling myself the Knight of the White Heron. I wish her grace good health."
"Good health,
"Happiness, viva!"
long live her grace."
Henrietta thanked them with a faint nod of her head, decorated with a diamond-encrusted tiara. She had so many diamonds on her that she could have scratched glass just by passing. Beside her sat Dandelion, smiling foolishly. A little further away, between two matrons, sat Emil Regis. He was dressed in a black velvet jacket, looking like a vampire. He was waiting on the ladies and entertaining them with his conversation. They listened with fascination. Geralt took the platter with the zander, garnished with parsley, and served Fringilla Vigo, who sat on his left and was dressed in a gown of mauve satin and a gorgeous amethyst necklace, which sat prettily on her breast. Fringilla, watching him from beneath her black eyelashes, raised her goblet and smiled enigmatically.
"Your good health, Geralt. I'm glad they put us together."
"Don't count your chickens," he replied with a smile, for he was actually in decent humour. "The feast has only just begun."
"On the contrary, it has lasted long enough for you to have complimented me. How long must I wait?"
"You are enchantingly beautiful."
Slowly, with restraint."
She laughed. He would have sworn entirely sincerely.
"At this rate, I'm afraid to think where we might end up by the end of the banquet. Start with, say that I have a tasteful dress and that mauve suits me."
"Mauve suits you, although I confess I like you most in white." He saw a challenge in her emerald eyes. He was afraid to take it up. He was in such good humour. Kaea and Milva had been seated opposite. Kaea was sitting between two very young and ceaselessly twittering noblewomen, perhaps the Baron's daughters. The archer, meanwhile, was accompanied by an older, gloomy knight with a pockmarked face, who was as quiet as a stone. A little further away, meanwhile, sat Angoulême, calling the tune and making a racket among some young knights errant.
"What's this?"
she yelled, picking up a silver knife with a rounded end. "Without a point? Are they afraid we'll start stabbing each other or what?"
"Such knives," exclaimed Fringilla, "have been used in Beauclair since the times of Duchess Carolina Roberta, Anna Henrietta's grandmamma. It infuriated Caroberta when, during banquets, the guests used the knives to pick their teeth. And you can't pick your teeth with a knife with a rounded end."
"You cannot," agreed Angoulême, contorting her face roguishly. "Luckily, they've also given us forks." She pretended to put the fork in her mouth, but stopped on seeing Geralt's menacing look. The young knightling on her right chuckled shrilly. Geralt picked up a dish of duck in aspic and served Fringilla. He saw Kaea doing his uttermost to satisfy the Baron's daughter's whims while they gazed at him. He saw the young knights buzzing around Angoulême, vying with each other to pass her dishes and chuckling at her foolish jokes. He saw Milva, crumbling bread, staring at the tablecloth. Fringilla seemed to read his thoughts.
"She's done poorly, your taciturn companion," she whispered, leaning towards him. "Why, it can happen when a seating plan is being drawn up. Baron de Trastamara isn't blessed with courtliness or eloquence."
"Perhaps that's better," Geralt said softly. "A courtier drooling graciousness would have been worse. I know Milva."
"Are you sure?"
She glanced at him swiftly.
"You aren't measuring her according to your own standards, are you? Which, incidentally, are quite cruel."
He didn't reply, but instead served her pouring her wine, and decided it was high time to clear up a few matters. "You're a sorceress, aren't you?"
"I am,"
she admitted, masking her surprise extremely deftly.
"How did you know?"
"I can sense the aura," he said, without going into details. "And I'm skilled." To be quite clear, she said a moment later, it wasn't my intention to deceive anybody. I have no obligation to flaunt my profession or put on a pointed hat and black cloak. Why use me to frighten children? I have the right to remain incognito. Undeniably. I'm in Beauclair because the largest, best-stocked library in the known world is here. Apart from university libraries, naturally. But universities are jealous of giving access to their shelves, and here I'm a relation and good friend of Henrietta, and can do as I wish. I envy you. During the audience, Henrietta hinted that the book collection may conceal a clue which may be useful to you. Don't be put off by her theatrical gushiness. That's just the way she is, and it really is likely that you'll find something in the library. Why? It's quite probable. It's enough to know what to look for and where. Indeed. Nothing more. The enthusiasm of your answers truly lifts my spirit and encourages me to talk. She narrowed her eyes slightly. I can guess the reason. You don't trust me, do you? A little more grouse, perhaps? I vow on the heron. A young knight from the end of the horseshoe stood up and blindfolded himself with a sash given him by the lady sitting next to him. I vow not to take off this sash until the marauders from the Cervantes Pass are entirely wiped out. The Duchess gave her acknowledgment with a gracious nod of her diamond-sparkling head. Geralt hoped Fringilla wouldn't continue on the subject. He was mistaken. You don't believe me, and you don't trust me, she said. You've given me a doubly painful blow. You don't only doubt that I sincerely want to help, but neither do you believe I can. Oh, Geralt, you've cut my pride and lofty ambition to the quick. Listen, no. She raised her knife and fork as though threatening him. Don't try to apologize. I can't bear men who apologize. What kind of men can you bear? She narrowed her eyes and continued to hold her cutlery like daggers about to strike. The list is long, she said slowly, and I don't want to bore you with the details. I merely state that men who are ready to go to the end of the world for their beloved, dauntlessly, scorning risk and danger, occupy quite a high position. And those that don't quit, even though there seems to be no chance of success. And the other positions on the list, he blurted out. The other men to your taste, also madmen. And what is true manliness? She tilted her head playfully, if not class and recklessness blended together in the correct proportions. Lords and ladies, barons and knights, shouted Chamberlain Le Goff loudly, standing up and raising a gigantic cup in both hands. In the given circumstances, I shall take the liberty of offering a toast to her enlightened ladyship, Duchess Anna Henrietta. Health and happiness! Hurrah! Long live the Duchess! Vivat! And now, lords and ladies. The Chamberlain put the cup down and nodded solemnly towards the liveried servants. Now, the Magna Bestia. An enormous roast on a dish, filling the hall with its marvellous aroma, was carried in by 4 servants on something resembling a sedan chair. The Magna Bestia! Roared the revellers as one. Hurrah! The Magna Bestia! What bloody beast is that? Angoulême expressed her anxiety loudly. I'm not going to eat it until I find out what it is. It's an elk, Geralt explained. A roast elk. Not just any elk, said Milva, after clearing her throat. That bull weighed 700 weight. With a fine 6-point rack, 700 weight and 40 pounds, gruffly commented the tight-lipped baron sitting beside her. They were the first words he'd uttered from the start of the banquet. Perhaps it would have been the beginning of a conversation, but the archer blushed, fixed her gaze on the tablecloth, and resumed her crumbling of bread. But Geralt had taken Fringilla's words to heart. Did you, my Lord Baron, he asked, Bring down that magnificent bull."
"Not I,"
said the tight-lipped baron.
"My son-in-law is an excellent shot, but that's a male topic, if I may say so. I beg for forgiveness. One shouldn't bore the ladies."
"With what bow?" asked Milver, still staring at the tablecloth. "No doubt nothing weaker than a 70-pounder.
Laminate. Layers of yew, acacia, and ash, glued together with sinews."
The baron slowly responded, visibly surprised.
"A double-bent zephyr, 75 pounds draw."
"And the draw length?"
29 inches.
The baron was speaking slower and slower, and he seemed to be spitting out each word. "A veritable ballista," Milver said calmly. "You could down a stag at even 100 paces with a bow like that, if the archer was genuinely able."
"Aye,"
wheezed the baron, as though somewhat piqued.
"I can hit a pheasant from 25 paces, if I may say so."
"From 105?" Milver raised her head. "I can hit a squirrel." The baron, disconcerted, gave a slight cough and quickly served the archer with food and drink.
"A good bow," he muttered, "is half the success, but no less important as the quality, if I may say so, of the shot. So you see, my lady, according to me, an arrow—" "Good health to her Grace Anna Henrietta! Good health to Viscount Julian de Lettenhove! Cheers! Vivant!"
"And she fucked him." Angoulême finished another foolish anecdote. The young knights roared with laughter. The baron's daughters, called Quelline and Nique, listened to Caille's tales open-mouthed, their eyes sparkling and their cheeks flushed. At the top table, the entire upper aristocracy were listening to Regis's disquisitions. Only isolated words reached Geralt's ears, despite his witcher's hearing. But he worked out that the talk was of spectres, striggers, succubuses, and vampires. Regis waved a silver fork and demonstrated that the best remedy against vampires is silver, a precious metal, the barest touch of which is absolutely fatal to them. "And garlic?" asked the ladies. "Garlic is also effective," admitted Regis, "but socially troublesome, since it stinks awfully." The band on the gallery played fiddles and pipes, and the acrobats, jugglers, and fire-eaters showed off their artistry. The jester tried to amuse the guests, but what chance did he have against Angoulême? Then a bear-tamer appeared with a bear, which, to general delight, did a dump on the floor. Angoulême became morose and subdued. It was difficult to compete with something like that. The pointy-nosed duchess suddenly fell into a fury, and one of the barons fell out of favour, and was escorted to the tower for some imprudent word. Few, apart from those directly involved, seemed bothered by the matter. "You won't be leaving here in a hurry, you daughter," said Fringilla Vigo, swinging her glass. "Although you would leave at once if you could. Nothing will come of it." "Don't read my thoughts, please." "I'm sorry. They were so strong I couldn't help it." "You've no idea how many times I've heard that." "You've no idea how much I know. Eat some artichokes, please. They're good for you. Good for the heart. The heart's a vital organ in a man. The second most important." "I thought the most important things were class and recklessness." "The qualities of the spirit ought to go hand in hand with the attributes of the body. From that comes perfection." "No one's perfect." "That's not an argument. One ought to try. Do you know what? I think I'll have those hen grouse." She cut the bird up on her plate so quickly and violently it made the witcher shudder. "You won't be leaving here in a hurry," she said. "Firstly, you have no reason to. Nothing's threatening you." "Nothing at all, indeed," he interrupted, unable to stop himself. "The Nilfgaardians will take fright at the stern note issued by the ducal chancellery, and even if they risked it, they would be driven from here by the knights-errant, taking vows on the heron with their eyes blindfold." "You're not in danger," she repeated, paying no attention to his sarcasm. Toussaint is generally regarded as an insignificant fairy tale duchy, ridiculous and unreal, and in a state of permanent intoxication and unending bacchic joy, owing to the production of wine. It isn't really treated seriously by anybody, but enjoys privileges. After all, it supplies wine, and without wine, as everyone knows, there's no life. For which reason no agents, spies, or secret services operate in Toussaint. And there's no need for an army. It's enough to have blindfolded knights errant. No one will attack Toussaint. I can see from your face I haven't thoroughly convinced you.
Not thoroughly.
Pity. Fringilla squinted. I like doing things thoroughly. I don't like anything that's incomplete, and neither do I like half measures or anything left unsaid. Thus, I will add, Fulco Artevelde, the prefect of Ridbruna, thinks you're dead. He was informed by fugitives that the Druidesses burned you all alive. Fulco is doing what he can to cover up the issue, which bears the hallmarks of a scandal. It's in his interest to do so. He has his career in mind. Even when he finds out you're alive, it'll be too late. The version he gave in his reports will be binding.
You know a great deal.
I've never concealed that. So, the argument about being pursued by Nilfgaard can be eliminated. And there aren't any other arguments in favor of a rapid departure.
Interesting.
But true. One can leave Toussaint via 4 mountain passes leading towards the 4 points of the compass. Which pass will you choose? The Druidesses told you nothing and refused to cooperate. The elf from the mountains has vanished.
You really do know a great deal.
We've already established that.
And you wish to help me.
But you reject that help. You don't believe in the sincerity of my intentions. You don't trust me.
Listen,
Don't explain yourself, and eat some more artichokes.
Someone else had made a vow on the heron. Caille was paying the Baron's daughters compliments. Angoulême, now tipsy, could be heard throughout the entire hall. The tight-lipped Baron, excited by the discourse on bows and arrows, had begun to dance attendance on Milva.
Please, why don't you try some wild boar, miss? Oh, if I may say so. There are fields of crops on my estates dug up by whole herds of them, if I may say so. Oh, you can come across some fine animals, 300-weight specimens, the height of the season. If, miss, you'd express a desire, we could, so to speak, go hunting together.
We shan't be staying here so long. Milva looked strangely inquiringly at Geralt. For we have more serious tasks than hunting, if you excuse me, sir. Although, she added quickly, seeing that the Baron was looking gloomy, I would most eagerly go hunting game with your lordship, if there is time. The Baron's face lit up at once.
If not the chase, he declared enthusiastically, then at least I must invite you to my residence. I will show you my antler trophy, pipe and sabre collections, so to speak.
Milva fixed her eyes on the tablecloth. The Baron seized a tray of fieldfares, served her, and then filled her wineglass.
Forgive me, he said. I am no courtier. I don't know how to entertain. I'm pretty wretched at courtly discourse.
I was raised in the forest. Milva cleared her throat. I esteem silence. Fringilla found Geralt's hand under the table and squeezed it hard. Geralt looked her in the eyes. He couldn't guess what was hidden in them. I trust you, he said. I believe in the sincerity of your intentions. You aren't lying? I swear on the heron. The town sentry must have had a few too many Yuletide tipples, for he was swaying. He banged his halberd against a signboard and loudly, though incoherently, announced it was 10 of the clock, although it was actually well after midnight.
Go to Beauclair by yourself, Reynard de Boisfren said unexpectedly,
as soon as they'd left the tavern.
"I'm staying in town until tomorrow. Farewell, Witcher."
Geralt knew the knight had a lady friend in town whose husband travelled a lot on business. They'd never talked about it, for men don't talk about such matters.
"Farewell, Reynard. Deal with the scoffing. Don't let it go off. There's a frost."
There was a frost. The narrow streets were empty and tenebrous. The moonlight shone on the roofs, gleamed brilliantly on the icicles hanging from the eaves, but didn't reach the streets. Roach's horseshoes rang on the cobblestones. Roach, thought the Witcher, heading towards Beauclair Palace. A shapely chestnut mare, a present from Anna Henrietta, and Dandelion. He spurred his horse on. He was in a hurry. After the feast, everybody met for breakfast, which they had become accustomed to taking in the servants' hall. They were always welcome there. God only knew why. Something hot was always found for them, straight from the saucepan, skillet, or spit, and there was always bread, dripping, bacon, cheese, and pickled mushrooms. A jug or two of some white or red, produce of the famous local vineyards, was never lacking. They always went there. Since they had arrived at Beauclair 2 weeks before, Geralt, Regis, Angoulême, and Milver. Only Dandelion broke his fast elsewhere. "They serve him his dripping and scratchings in bed," commented Angoulême, "and they pay obeisance to him." Geralt was inclined to believe it was like that, and that day he decided to investigate. He found Dandelion in the knight's hall. The poet was wearing a crimson beret as big as a loaf of sourdough rye bread and a matching doublet richly embroidered with golden thread. He was sitting on a curule seat with his lute in his lap and reacting with careless nods to the compliments of the ladies and courtiers surrounding him. Anna Henrietta, fortunately, wasn't in sight. So Geralt, without hesitation, broke protocol and went boldly into action. Dandelion saw him at once. "Lords and ladies," he said pompously, waving a hand just like a real king, "if you could leave us alone, the servants may also absent themselves." He clapped, and before the echo had died away, they were alone in the knight's hall, with suits of armour, paintings, panoplies, and the intense, lingering smell of the ladies' powder.
"What fun," Geralt remarked, without excessive malice. "You shoo them away like that, do you? It must feel nice to issue orders with one lordly gesture, one clap, one regal frown. Watch as they scuttle backwards like crayfish, bending over towards you in a bow. What fun, eh, my lord favourite?" Dandelion grimaced. "Is it about anything particular?" he asked sourly, "or just to talk for the sake of it?" "Something particular. So particular it couldn't be more so." "Say on, if you please." "We need 3 horses. That's for me, Cahier, and Angoulême, and 2 unmounted pack horses. Together, 3 good steeds and 2 hacks. Hacks, well, as a last resort, mules, laden with victuals and feed. Your Duchess must consider you worth that much. What? You earned at least that, I trust." "There won't be a problem with it." Dandelion, not looking at Geralt, got down to tuning his lute. "I'm only surprised by your haste. I'd say it surprises me to the same degree as your foolish sarcasm does." "My haste surprises you?" "You'd better believe it. October is ending, and the weather is visibly worsening. Snow will fall in the passes any day now." "And you're surprised by my haste?" The Witcher nodded. "But I'm glad you reminded me. Sort out some warm clothing, some furs." "I thought," Dandelion said slowly, "that we'd sit out the winter here, that we'd stay here." "If you want to stay," Geralt blurted out, "then stay." "I do." Dandelion stood up suddenly and put down his lute. "And I will." The Witcher audibly sucked in air and said nothing. He looked at a tapestry depicting a fight between a titan and a dragon. The titan, standing solidly on 2 left legs, was trying hard to break the dragon's jaw, and the dragon looked none too pleased about it. "I'm staying," Dandelion repeated. "I love Henrietta, and she loves me." Geralt still said nothing. "You'll have your horses," continued the poet.
I'll order them to prepare you a thoroughbred mare called Roach, naturally. You'll be equipped, well-stocked with food, and warmly dressed. But I sincerely advise you to wait till the spring. Anarietta, am I hearing right?" The Witcher finally regained his voice. "Or do my ears deceive me?" "Your intellect," snapped the troubadour, "is certainly blunt. I can't speak for your other senses. I repeat, we love one another, Anarietta and I. I'm staying in Tucson with her." "In what role? Lover? Favourite? Or perhaps ducal consort?" "I'm indifferent in principle to our formal and legal status," Dandelion admitted frankly, "but one cannot rule anything out, including marriage." Geralt was silent again, contemplating the Titan fighting the dragon. "Dandelion," he said finally, "if you've been drinking, sober up. If you haven't taken a drink, do so, then we'll talk." "I don't quite understand why you're talking like this." Dandelion frowned. "Then have a little think." "What about?" "Does my relationship with Anarietta shock you so much? Perhaps you'd like to appeal to my good sense. Skip it. I've thought the matter through. Anarietta loves me, and do you know the saying, the favours of duchesses are uncertain?" Geralt interrupted. "Even if your Anarietta isn't flighty, and if you'll excuse the frankness, she looks that way to me, then what? Duchesses only marry musicians in fairy tales." "Firstly," Dandelion puffed himself up, "even a boor like you must have heard of morganatic marriages. Must I give you examples from ancient and modern history? Secondly, it'll probably surprise you, but I'm not from the hoi polloi. My people, the de Lettenhoves, come from—" "I'm listening to you, and I'm amazed," Geralt interrupted again, losing his temper. "Is my friend Dandelion really spouting such balderdash? Has my friend Dandelion really gone completely mad? Is Dandelion, whom I know as a realist, now beginning all of a sudden to live in the sphere of illusion? Open your bloody eyes, you dolt." "Aha," Dandelion said slowly, tightening his lips. "What a curious reversal of roles. I'm a blind man, and you, meanwhile, have suddenly become an attentive and astute observer. It was usually the other way around. And, out of interest, what don't I notice that you can see, eh? What, according to you, should I open my eyes to?" "For instance," drawled the Witcher, "the fact that your Duchess is a spoiled child that has grown up into a spoiled and arrogant turkey cock. That fact she, fascinated by the novelty, has graced you with her charms and will dump you immediately when a new busker with a newer and more beguiling repertoire comes along. What you're saying is very base and vulgar. You're aware of that, I hope." "I'm aware of your lack of awareness. You're a lunatic, Dandelion." The poet said nothing and stroked the neck of his lute. Some time passed before he spoke. "We set off from Brokilon on a deranged mission," he began slowly. "Taking a lunatic risk, we launched ourselves on an insane quest for a mirage without the slightest chance of success. A quest for a phantom, a daydream, an absolutely impossible ideal. We set off in pursuit like idiots, like madmen. But I didn't utter a word of complaint, Geralt. I didn't call you a madman. I didn't ridicule you, for you had hope and love in you. You are being guided by them on this reckless mission. I was too, as a matter of fact. But I've caught up with the mirage, and I was lucky enough that the dream came true. My mission is over. I've found what is so difficult to find, and I intend to keep it. Is that insanity? It would be insanity to give it up and let it slip through my fingers." Geralt was silent for as long as Dandelion had been earlier. "Pure poetry," he finally said, "and it's difficult to rival you at that. I won't say another word. You've destroyed my arguments. Helped, I admit, by your quite apposite ones. Farewell, Dandelion." "Farewell, Geralt." The palace library really was immense. Its dimensions were at least twice those of the Knight's Hall, and it had a glass roof, owing to which it was light, although Geralt suspected it was bloody hot during the summer. The aisles between the bookshelves were narrow and cramped, so he walked cautiously in order not to knock any books off. He also had to step over volumes piled up on the floor. "I'm here." The centre of the library was lost among the books, which were arranged in piles and columns. Many were lying quite chaotically, individually or in picturesque heaps. "Here, Geralt." He ventured among the canyons and ravines between the books, and found her. She was kneeling among scattered incunables, leafing through and categorizing them. She had on a modest grey dress, hitched up a little for convenience. Geralt found the sight extremely seductive. "Don't be horrified by the mess," she said, wiping her brow with her forearm, because she was wearing thin, dust-stained silk gloves. "The books are being inventoried and catalogued, but the work has stopped at my request, so I could be alone in the library. I can't bear strangers' eyes on me while I'm working." "I'm sorry. Shall I leave?" "You're not a stranger." She narrowed her eyes slightly. "I enjoy having your eyes on me. Don't stand like that. Sit here on the books." He sat down on A Description of the World, published in folio. "This shambles," Fringilla indicated around her with a brisk gesture, "has unexpectedly made my work easier. I was able to get to books that are normally lying somewhere at the bottom of a heap that's impossible to shift. The ducal librarians moved the mounds, a titanic effort, thanks to which some literary treasures and rarities saw the light of day. Look, ever seen anything like this?" "Speculum aureum. Yes, I have." "I apologize. I forgot. You've seen plenty. That was meant to be a compliment, not sarcasm. And take a glance at that. It's gesta regum. We'll start with that, so you'll understand who your Ciri really is, whose blood flows in her veins. Your expression's sourer than usual, did you know? What's the reason?" "Dandelion." "Tell me." He did. Fringilla listened, sitting cross-legged on a pile of books. "Well," she sighed after he'd finished, "I admit I expected something of the kind. I noticed long ago that Anarietta was betraying symptoms of lovesickness." "Love?" he snorted. "Or a lordly whim?" "You seem not to believe." She looked at him piercingly. "In sincere and pure love." "My beliefs," he said, "aren't the subject of debate and are beside the point. It's about Dandelion and his stupid—" He broke off, suddenly losing confidence. "Love," Fringilla said slowly, "is like renal colic. Until you have an attack, you can't even imagine what it's like. And when people tell you about it, you don't believe them."
"There's something in that," the Witcher agreed. "But there are also differences. Good sense can't protect you from renal colic, or cure it."
"Love mocks good sense. That's its charm and beauty."
"Stupidity, more like."
She stood up and walked towards him, taking off her gloves. Her eyes were dark and profound beneath the curtains of her eyelashes. She smelled of ambergris, roses, library dust, decayed paper, minium and printing ink, oak gall ink, and strychnine, which was being used to poison the library mice. The smell had little in common with an aphrodisiac, so it was all the stranger that it worked on him.
"Don't you believe," she said in a changed voice, "in sudden impulses, in unforeseen attractions, in the impacts of fireballs flying along collision trajectories, in cataclysms?"
She held out a hand and touched his arms. He touched her arms. Their faces moved closer, still hesitantly, vigilantly, as though they were afraid of scaring away some very, very timid creature. And then the fireballs collided and a cataclysm ensued. They fell onto a pile of folio volumes, which scattered in all directions under their weight. Geralt pushed his nose into Fringilla's cleavage, seized her powerfully, and grabbed her by the knees. Various books impeded him from pulling her dress up above her waist, including the Lives of the Prophets, which was resplendent with intricate initials and illustrations, and De Hemorrhoidibus, a fascinating but controversial medical treatise. The Witcher pushed the volumes to one side, impatiently tugging at her skirt. Fringilla raised her hips enthusiastically. Something was chafing her shoulder. She turned her head. A study of the midwife's art. She quickly looked the other way so as not to tempt fate. On hot, sulphurous waters. The temperature was rising indeed. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw the frontispiece of the book her head was resting on. Remarks on Inevitable Death. Even better, she thought. The Witcher was fighting with her underwear. She lifted her hips, but this time gently, so it would look like an accidental movement and not provocative assistance. She didn't know him and didn't know how he reacted to women, whether he didn't perhaps prefer the kind that pretend they don't know what they want to those that do, and whether it would discourage him if her knickers were hard to take off. The Witcher, however, wasn't betraying any signs of discouragement. On the contrary, one might say. Seeing that it was high time, Fringilla spread her legs enthusiastically and vigorously, knocking over a tower of books and fascicles, which slid down on them like an avalanche. A copy of Mortgage Law bound in embossed leather came to rest against her buttock, and a copy of Codex Diplomaticus decorated with brass edgings against Geralt's wrist. Geralt assessed and exploited the situation at once, placing the bulky tome where it belonged. Fringilla squealed because the edgings were cold, but only for a moment. She sighed loudly, let go of the Witcher's hair, spread her arms, and seized a book in each hand, her left grabbing Descriptive Geometry, her right an outline study of reptiles and amphibians. Geralt, holding her hips, knocked over another pile of books with an unwitting kick, but was nonetheless too occupied to worry about the volumes falling on him. Fringilla, moaning spasmodically, thrashed her head from side to side over the pages of Remarks on Inevitable. The books subsided with a rustle, the sharp scent of old dust making their noses tingle. Fringilla screamed. The Witcher didn't hear it because her thighs were clenched against his ears. He threw off the bothersome History of Wars and the Journal of all the Arts Necessary for a Happy Life, impatiently fighting with the buttons and fastenings of her bodice. He wandered from the south to the north, unintentionally reading the inscriptions on covers, spines, frontispieces, and title pages. Under Fringilla's waist was the exemplary farmer. Under her armpit, not far from her small, charming, jauntily pert breast, on Ineffective and Recalcitrant Shire Reeves. Under her elbow, Economics, or a simple exposition on how to create, divide up, and consume wealth. He read Remarks on Inevitable Death with his mouth on her neck and his hands near Shire Reeves. Fringilla emitted a difficult-to-classify sound, neither a scream, a moan, nor a sigh. The bookshelves shook. Piles of books trembled and tumbled down, arranging themselves like rocky Inselbergs during a severe earthquake. Fringilla screamed. A rare book, the first edition of De Larvicensis et Figuris Comicis, fell from its shelf with a crash, followed by a collection of general horsemanship commands, taking down with it John of Atre's heraldry, embellished with beautiful prints. The Witcher groaned, kicking over more volumes as he jerked a leg straight. Fringilla screamed once again, long and loudly, knocking over Contemplations or Meditations for Every Day of the Year, an interesting anonymous work which had ended up on Geralt's back for no apparent reason. Geralt trembled and read above her shoulder, learning, like it or not, that Remarks had been written by Dr. Albertus Rivus, had been published by the Academia Sintrensis, and had been printed by the master typographer Johann Froben Jr. in the second year of the reign of His Majesty King Corbett. All was silent, save only the rustle of books slipping down and pages turning over. What to do? Thought Fringilla, touching Geralt's side and the hard corner of Deliberations on the Nature of Things with lazy strokes of her hand. Should I suggest it, or wait until he does, as long as he won't think me flighty and immodest? What will happen if he doesn't suggest it? Let's go and find a bed somewhere, the Witcher suggested a little hoarsely. It doesn't do to treat books like this. We found a bed, thought Geralt, letting Roach gallop down an avenue in the castle grounds. We found a bed in the alcove in her chambers. We made love like mad things, voraciously, greedily, ravenously, as though following years of celibacy, as though storing it up for later, as though at risk of celibacy again. We told each other many things. We told each other very trivial truths. We told each other very beautiful lies. But those lies, although they were lies, weren't calculated to deceive. Excited by the gallop, he steered Roach straight at a snow-covered rosebed and made the mare jump it. We made love and talked, and our lies became more and more mendacious. 2 months, from October to Yule. 2 months of furious, greedy, wild love. Roach's horseshoes thudded on the flags of the courtyard at Beauclair Palace. He passed through corridors, quickly and soundlessly. No one saw or heard him, not the guardsmen with halberds, killing time on their sentry duty by chatting and gossiping, nor the slumbering lackeys and pages. Even the candle flames didn't flicker when he passed by the candelabras. He was near the palace kitchen, but he didn't go in, didn't join the company, who were inside, disposing of a small cask and something fried. He remained in the shadows, listening. Angoulême was speaking. There's something bewitched about this place, this fucking Toussaint. Some kind of charm hangs over the whole valley, especially over the palace. I was surprised at Dandelion. I was surprised at the Witcher. But now I'm nauseous, and I've got a weird feeling in the pit of my stomach. Shit. I even caught myself... I'm not going to tell you that. Seriously, let's get out of here. Let's get out of here as fast as possible. Tell that to Geralt, said Milva. It's him you should tell. Yes, talk to him, said Kaye somewhat sarcastically. During one of those brief moments when he's free, between the 2 activities he's been engaging in for 2 months to help him forget. As for you, snorted Angoulême, you're mainly available in the park, playing at hoops to the Baron's daughters. Pshaw, no 2 ways about it. There's something bewitched about this bloody Toussaint. Regis disappears somewhere at night. Auntie has a tight-lipped Baron. Shut it, you brat, and don't call me Auntie. Come, come, Regis interjected placatingly. Girls, take it easy. Milva, Angoulême, let there be concord. United we stand, divided we fall. As Her Grace the Duchess, lady of this country, this palace, this bread dripping and gherkin says. Another drop, anyone? Milva sighed heavily. We've stayed here too long. Too long, I tell you. Too long we've sat here in idleness. It's driving us mad. Well said, said Kaye. Very well said. Geralt cautiously withdrew, soundlessly, like a bat. He passed through corridors, quickly and soundlessly. No one saw or heard him. Neither the guards, nor the liveried servants, nor the pages. Not even the candle flames flickered as he passed by the candelabras. The rats heard him, raised their whiskered snouts, and stood up on their hind legs. But they didn't take fright. They knew him. He often went that way. In the alcove, it smelled of charms and witchcraft, ambergris and roses, and woman's sleep. But Fringilla wasn't asleep. She sat up in bed, threw off the eiderdown, enthralling him with the sight, and taking possession of him. You are here at last, she said, stretching. You neglect me dreadfully, Witcher. Get undressed and come here quickly. Very, very quickly. She passed, quickly and soundlessly, through the corridors. No one saw or heard her. Neither the guardsmen, idly gossiping at their posts, nor the slumbering liveried servants, nor the pages. Not even the candle flames flickered as she passed by the candelabras. The rats heard her, raised their whiskered snouts, stood up on their hind legs, and followed her with their black, beady eyes. They didn't take fright. They knew her. She often went that way. There was a corridor in Beauclair Palace, and at the end a chamber, the existence of which no one knew about. Neither the current lady of the castle, the Duchess Anarietta, nor the first lady of the castle, her great-grandmamma, the Duchess Adimata, nor the architect, the celebrated Peter Pharamond, who made extensive modifications to the building, nor the master masons who worked according to Pharamond's plans and guidelines. Hell, even Chamberlain Le Goff, who was thought to know everything about Beauclair, didn't know about the existence of that corridor. The corridor and the chamber, disguised by a powerful illusion, were known only to the palace's original elven builders, and later, when the elves had gone and Toussaint became a duchy, to the small number of sorcerers linked to the ducal house, including Artorios Vigo, a master of magical arcana and great specialist in illusions, and his young niece, Fringilla, who had a special talent for illusions. Having passed quickly and noiselessly through the corridors of Beauclair Palace, Fringilla Vigo stopped in front of a fragment of wall between two columns decorated with acanthus leaves. A softly spoken spell and rapid gesture made the wall, which was illusory, vanish, revealing a corridor, apparently blind. At the end of the corridor, though, was a door, disguised by another illusion, and beyond the door, a dark chamber. Once inside, not wasting time, Fringilla launched a telecommunicator. The oval looking-glass became cloudy, and then cleared, lighting up the room, illuminating in the darkness the ancient dust-laden tapestries on the walls. A large room, plunged in subtle chiaroscuro. A round table with several women sitting around it appeared in the looking-glass. 9 women. "Greetings, Miss Vigo," said Philippa Eilhart. "What's new?" "Nothing, unfortunately," replied Fringilla, after clearing her throat. "Nothing since the last telecommunication, not a single attempt at scanning." "That's bad," said Philippa. "Frankly speaking, we'd counted on you uncovering something. Please at least tell us, has the Witcher calmed down now? Are you capable of keeping him in Toussaint at least until May?" Fringilla Vigo said nothing for some time. She didn't have the slightest intention of mentioning to the lodge that only in the last week the Witcher had called her Yennefer twice, and both at a moment when in every respect she was entitled to hear her own name. But the lodge, in turn, was entitled to expect the truth, honesty, and a legitimate conclusion. "No," she answered at last. "Probably not until May. But I'll do everything in my power to keep him here as long as possible." Corrid, a monster of the large strigiforms family, QV, also called by local people a Corrigan, Rutakin, Rumpelstiltskin, Fidgeter, or Mesmer. One thing can be said about him. He is dreadfully beastly. He is such a devil's spawn and scoundrel, such a bitch's tail, that we shall not write anything about his appearance or habits, since, in sooth, I tell you, we shall not waste breath on the whoreson. Physiologus.